YOB will be reading from Robear and the Reaper by Tim Stegaheis, where a series of metaphysical misadventures leads to a years-long search for the king of the necromancers. Enjoy.
Chapter 10. Such was the nature of the pursuit of the Deathmaster. They located and removed his lieutenants and lackeys while narrowing down the possible locations of his stronghold. They abandoned the old school in favor of a ship they had confiscated from one such lieutenant. This gave him additional mobility, but forced Sir Chancery to choose between duties, as he could not commune between Richmond and their far-flung engagements fast enough. Happily, he chose to remain with the pursuit of the necromancer and allow an up-and-coming young noble to take the lordship of the Virginia territory. Father James, Norman, and John Dugan also stayed with the team. As the years went on, the human part of the team grew gray and aged, while the undead experienced no aging. John aged slowly, whether because of his resurrection or because of his Highland hardiness was unclear. Morketh, Jareth, and Bash, their demon-in-flesh operatives, aged even more slowly. Sadly, Father James passed away and had to be replaced by the much younger Father Mortimer. Death assured them that Father James had an arrangement with his God and would be passing through the valley quickly. They were operating off the coast of the Hispanic Coalition of Kingdoms, a church-dominated territory along the west coast of the North American continent. Using blimps to dash into a suspected hotspot and dash out before the local papal enforcer caught up with them, they finally discovered something useful about the dimension-hopping allies of the Deathmaster. Apparently they were rogue nobles from the realm of chaos. Word had it that the necromancer, under the name King Mortis, had become the king of one of the small nations within the coalition and was theoretically under the protection of the church. If they could prove that he was practicing magic, though, he would forfeit that protection and be subject to excommunication and imprisonment. Death, of course, had his own plans for the Deathmaster and his associates. Robear had finally mastered the art of changing his appearance, even to the point of altering his face. He no longer bothered with material suits of clothes. He could resort to either a material sword or shadow sword with equal skill, and proved to be a more and more able leader. Mama had not focused on her appearance so much as her character. She sounded more like a woman from Savannah than Haiti, and her vocabulary was more urbane and sophisticated. She would still be the one most likely to resort to magic means in a fight. In minor encounters, her chatterbox ability often forced opponents to flee or engage prematurely, giving the team an advantage. Torrin became far more involved in the team, although still somewhat aloof. But when there was cruelty or powerful evil, Alina would unleash powers of light that few could stand up to. She obtained for Torrin the ability to form an axe of light, whose powers were a mystery to them. 14 more false priests were faced and defeated by the Torrin-Alina combination. Most of them left the church, and 2 became worthy ministers of their office. The fear and despair Ruth and Nobody radiated became even more powerful and could be focused to great effect. Both learned to wield their shadow swords skillfully. Ruth especially became a force without mercy when facing powerful opponents. Nobody would back her up in all things, as if he were her personal shadow. Robear's and Mama's demons, of course, encouraged them and cheered them on whenever a foe chose to face them. The rumors within the Deathmaster's forces referred to Death's vengeance and began to fear them. Some began to call them the Reaper's Revolvers, because Robear and Mama each had had their physical forms destroyed, and Death had resurrected them and sent them back. This helped demoralize those who had destroyed them. Slowly, but with increasing surety, the forces of the Deathmaster became disorganized and uncertain of themselves. The Reaper had other teams pursuing the members of the Deathmaster's organization, adding to their disintegration. The noose was drawing around the person who would defy death and even seek to displace him. The break came when they tracked down one of the Deathmaster's lieutenant necromancers and broke into his hideout underneath another cathedral. This one was prepared and sent an army of animated corpses to block their advance. They were in a desperate fight when Robear managed to destroy one of the necromancer's undead commanders and assume his identity. Following some luggers back into the central office, he knocked their necromancer over the head and extinguished all the candles that kept his undead active. They took all the books and other paperwork they could find, including a stash of documents hidden under the dark altar. These were such that they included references to King Mortis as the authority to whom the necromancer reported. Death was quite pleased. They now had the key. They just needed to know where to find the Deathmaster himself. One day, the undead team was summoned to Death's office. Once there, they met with Death and a most unusual being who seemed to be a blob of constantly reshaping putty. "This is Lord Farraga of Chaos," said Death. "He has been hunting two of our unwelcome guests, whom I believe are helping Deathmaster in his perversions." Lord Farraga formed a pseudomouth and greeted them. "Salutations, dead things," Lord Farraga said. "I am here seeking Lady Soliloquy and Lord Ythla. They are in violation of the borders of this dimension. Your Lord Death believes that they are associating with Deathmaster and will try to evade bringing them back to the Maelstrom to answer for this violation. With your help, I plan to bring their activities under arrest and return them from your Lord to our Lord. Pleased to meet you." His English was a little bit off, but he seemed to be sincere, and they welcomed him. Farraga formed into a tripod form, bringing him up to about 5 foot tall. He shook hands with Robear and Mama. Torin and Alina avoided him. Along with Farraga, there were 2 8-foot forms which did not speak. They stood like two pale stalagmites until they grew legs and followed Farraga out into the valley as they spoke with the team. "Lady Soliloquy must be returned to, how is it said, Keeper family, as she is committed for examination deceptions. I also am to take back Lord Ythla, as he may explain why he is not in his home plane. We believe that he is supposed to be dead. This may be important." "You don't have to tell us that," said Mama, rolling her eyes. "Every person we have faced who have outlived their time has caused more trouble than a score of juvenile hoodlums." "I am not concerned with trouble as is," replied Lord Farraga. "But when one being brings imbalance from one place through the place of chaos into another place, the continuation of our work is threatened. Also, the balance of this place helps to show the wonder that is chaos. Do you see?" "I think I follow you," said Robear. "We need the Earth world to keep being the Earth world and chaos to keep being chaos, so that both places are good for those of us who are from them. Am I right?" "I believe that is so," said Lord Farraga. "So how do we find these runaways?" asked Mama. "We still need to locate the Deathmaster, or King Mortis as he is calling himself." "I have discovered that King Mortis rules the small world of Niban, part of the kingdom of New Cordoba. Perhaps if we find information of his hiding and sneak in undetected upon him, Lady Soliloquy and Lord Ythla will be near." "I'm in complete agreement with you on that," responded Mama. "Yes, indeed," agreed Robear. "Let's get started." Their next encounter was to be typical of those battles as they got nearer to the Deathmaster. Many industrial and social leaders were in his employ. They could be identified by their unnaturally long lives. As the team discovered, they also possessed the superhuman strength that otherwise marked the undead. The first such person they came to was a newspaper printer and crime boss. When the undead team arrived, the workers fled. When they cornered the printer, he picked up a large press weighing several thousand pounds and heaved it at Robear and Mama. The 2 pillars that accompanied Lord Farraga zipped into the space between them and caught the press and threw it back at the man. He managed to fall and roll out of the way as the machine crashed through the wall and rolled away in ruins. He next picked up a blade that had been part of the press and engaged Robear. Robear surprised the man with his sword skill, and the printer soon gave up and threw his blade into Robear's face as he tried to dash through the hole in the wall. Ruth and Nobody intercepted him, and with a few well-placed slashes with their shadow swords, they had the printer's spirit standing naked outside his body and helpless against Mama's shadows as they grabbed him and dragged him down into Death's office for questioning. His body, meanwhile, quickly deteriorated and was an ugly corpse. After several more such battles, they were led to a secret palace in the forest near the border. The walls and dome covering the estate were crammed with signs and symbols to keep the agents of death out. Fortunately, they had little effect on Lord Farragut and his helpers. Soon a door through the ward was established, and the battle was on. Hordes of demons and shadowy undead minions assaulted them on every hand and kept them busy as they worked their way to the innermost sanctum of their long-sought quarry. Without Torn and Alina, they would not have succeeded. Alina had to maintain her angelic light as a shield lest they be thoroughly overwhelmed. Many demons were able to engage them anyway. The heavy iron door to the final hiding place of King Mortis proved to be of little obstacle to the gray pillars that Lord Farragut sent against it. After several minutes of bashing, the doors gave way. The smoke of hundreds of candles and incense billowed out. Then they were facing the Death Master himself. He was an ugly man, skinny and pale in appearance, with loose robes of black and green. His colorless face had several piercings that may have been stylish in his long-ago youth. Now they were discolored and foul-looking. His bald head was scarred and pockmarked with age and neglect. Ruth and Nobody tried to affect him to no avail. His face was a tangled-up snarl of contempt as he addressed them. "So, you filthy minions of that simple buffoon who calls himself Death. Here you are. Here you have come to be destroyed. Is there any reason I should spare your dirty little souls?" he intoned, as if he had been practicing the speech for a while. "You have an appointment with Death," said Robear, ignoring the man's speech. "You must account for your many crimes and obscenities." "I am the Master of Death," said the ugly man. "It is this Death who will answer to me. I will not be made a subject of that witless clod who thinks that his precious schedule is all important. If you continue to annoy me, I shall dispose of you and your doddering master." "As you will," said Robear, forming his shadow sword. "Pah!" said Deathmaster, and raised a hand with a ball of black energy forming in it. Both Robear and Mama formed shadow shields and raised their swords to defend themselves. The ugly man threw the ball at Mama. The energy swelled and was monstrous when it slammed into Mama, shattering her shield, breaking her sword, and reducing Mama to an ugly smear on the floor. Smoke rose from the scorched floor and the destroyed wall. "My God!" shouted Robear. "That's not possible!" Both Ruth and Nobody tried to strike him with shadow swords, but the Deathmaster managed to force them back with his spells. Somehow he was able to affect them as though they were physical. "I am not one of those pathetic magicians that you have been fighting," said the Deathmaster with a sneer. "I have powers such as you are not prepared to understand. Now you will cease to exist." He raised his hand again, but before anything could form, the helpers of Lord Farragut stepped up beside him and formed multiple arms that wrapped around the man's bony form. "Get back, you spineless obscenities," he commanded. "I will show you what happens to those who interfere with a god." He opened his mouth to say something, but Lord Farragut stuffed a pseudopod in his mouth and silenced him. "We must know what he knows," he said. "There is knowledge of our quarry in this brain." "I can help you there," said Robear, controlling his anger and surprise. "Shadows, who wants to be a hero?" "I'm not tackling this one," said Morketh with a shudder. "He is much too much for me." Jareth and Bash likewise stood back. This would be far more dangerous foe than those defeated before. I'll see what I can be seen, said one of Robear's eldest shadows. Don't go too far away. This is going to be rough. The shadow was gone only a short while before he returned with an air of breathless anxiety. I shall not go to him again, the shadow stated. His mind is a twisted, vicious predator. I barely escaped him, but I found out what you wish to know. They learned that the two fugitives from Chaos were supposed to meet the Death Master here in his palace at dawn. They then brought the Death Master down to Death's office, where between Death and Lord Farraga, they divested him of his magic, his mental weaponry, and his physical body. Death took the resulting weak and demoralized spirit out into the valley to wait an eon or two for his judgment. He would be allowed to contemplate how many deities he had angered and what they planned for him. Mama's spirit was there too. Death had long ago dismissed them from penance due to their earlier successes. She looked dejected and sad. I wanted so badly to be there when we finish this, she said. Now I must wait for a new Scratch Reaper before I can come back. I know that you will have finished with those other two troublemakers by then. I hope so, replied Robear. Don't get too comfortable, Mama, here. There's still a lot of high-powered magicians and necromancers out there that we have to deal with. I know, but they won't be as exciting as that son of a... Mama, Torn cut her off. The pursuit of good and justice is not about the glory or the glamour. It's about common, normal folks having the right to be just good people. That's what we are working for. Actually, you are working so people can be born where they're supposed to be born and die when they are supposed to die, said Death behind Torin. Harumph, said Alina. That may be what your goal is, but Torin and I have higher expectations of ourselves. That is just a detail to me, said Death. You had better be getting back to that palace if you're going to catch those two miscreants.